Hey everyone, it's Alex Telck. We want to reach people where they're at, not where we think they should be. And if you like what you hear today and you want to tell us your story on the show or just reach out, then email me at atelk@twny.life. And remember, it's okay to not be okay.
I've seen the devil's shadow underneath the moon. Keep that fire going, the sun is coming soon.
All right, welcome to the latest episode of TWNY podcast. Before we kick things off, just wanted to let everybody know that we're not doctors. I'm certainly not smart enough to be a doctor. And if you're going through any serious mental health problems or anything like that, don't use us as a replacement for therapy. Therapy has its place. It's extremely important. They know what they're doing to a medical clinical degree. And I like to think of us as more of a kind of a supplement instead of a replacement. So with that being said, we have our awesome new guest, Katie Botten. She is a staff sergeant in the United States military. And here she is.
Hi, my name is Katie, and yes, I am active duty in the Army, and I'm currently stationed at Fort Benning. I actually found out about this podcast because I am a coworker of Alex's. He's a gunsmith where we are, and I dug into his podcast a little bit, started listening, and I just fell in love with why you guys are doing this. And my heart is so big on the suicide prevention and awareness stuff anyway. I'm such a big advocate for it. So I'm really honored that you even let me do this right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And
No. We're honored to have you. You're so motivated and to see like how happy you are about this. And like we had a conversation earlier today, and just the positivity and the motivation that you had when you were talking to me, just the passion that you had for it. It was awesome. It was good to see.
Yes. Oh man, I gathered this passion just from me going through it, listening to your first podcast and how you grew up with your dad being so tough on you. Yeah, my dad, he was super tough on me too. You got it, Papa Joe.
Mhm.
He was in Ranger Regiment, so of course he's tough as nails and hard as hell, right? And he was like, no, I got to raise my kids this way too. So I was like this mini Ranger running around all the time, and feelings were never a thing in my house. Like if you were sad or you felt a certain type of way, like you hid that. It was, you don't talk about it, and you put on this face is like, nope, I'm fine. We're going to handle it straight on. Right. And, I see it now that I'm older that he raised me that way to prepare me for what the world is right now. And things they change and you go through it. And I thank my dad for the way that he raised me now. Back then, I'm like, can you calm down a little bit? Don't yell at me
Yeah.
so much,
Absolutely. Yep.
But I get it. He's the reason I got through basic as well as I did, and standing next to these other people that are just like bawling their eyes out. It's like, oh, I want my mom, like
You think back all those
18.
times that toughened you up.
Yeah, like we're 18 going through this place, and I'm just like, this scares you guys? Like, no, have you seen my dad? But yeah, so he raised me in a way where emotions were just put aside all the time. And going through what I went through years ago, I'll probably say 5-6 years ago is when I really went through my own depression. And, I was 19 back then and 26 now. So it's been some time for me to really grow up, as you can say, and really step back and see a big picture. But back then I was very closed-minded, and I wanted to blame a lot of people for the way I was feeling. And now knowing that that wasn't the case, and what I went through was just, I left home at 18, and I left everything that I was used to and my routine that I had back then, and I was so focused on just getting to where I always wanted to be and making others proud instead of making myself proud.
Mhm.
I always put others before me, and I never really put myself first. And just, I think a year had passed by, and I'm just entering like a super deep hole at this point. I was getting hazed with the military, so that kind of
Mhm.
stuff happens,
Yep.
being the low man on the totem pole. It's one of those things. And I felt like I couldn't do anything right, and I was always getting in trouble for something. Something. And I could literally walk to the bathroom and they would say I'm walking the wrong way. you know? You get made fun of over the stupidest things and you just deal with it, and
Yep.
sometimes like, oh, you're joking, shut the hell up, right? And
Mhm.
you can shake off those things. But one day, I don't even remember what I did, but I had to go outside and flip rocks because they told me that they had to sunbathe, right? I had to sunbathe rocks. And I'm
I've
like,
never heard that
why?
before. That is very funny.
Yes. I laugh at it now and I'm like, wow, I went through that. Oh my goodness. So I mean, I entered this just dark hole and I really didn't even know what was going on. Like we were talking about earlier, was I've experienced grief,
Mhm.
right? And I've experienced dealing with how to get over somebody's passing and a loved one dying just instantly. Like I watched my grandma go through the cancer stuff and it
Mm.
was very bad. She had uh, I think it was pancreatic cancer and lung cancer.
Oh,
And
geez.
yeah, she passed very quickly.
Mhm.
And it was just really rough to see that at a young age. And of course, I wake up the next morning and my mom's there like, hey, Roro passed away. And I'm like, I just kind of stopped dead in my tracks and I didn't know how to feel. But that was grief. I've never experienced sadness until I was older.
Mhm.
And I didn't know how to deal with sadness. I can deal with grief and I can deal with my dad yelling at me, like, okay, it's just another day. We'll get over it.
Mhm.
But it just kept piling and piling and piling. And it is never just one thing that makes you think, this is it. It's my time to go.
No, yeah, no, it's never just like the piece of straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's almost like a just a gigantic weight on top of you, just with everything. And you can't
hmm
really pinpoint what it is, but it's all just been sitting on you for a long time.
Yeah. And again, you never experience it until you really truly just it happens.
Mhm.
And man, one thing after another, and it became a daily thing where something was going wrong, whether it be at work or just in my relationship. I was dating my husband at the time,
Mhm.
just dating, and him being gone all the time, and like we would just swap of being gone, so we would never see each other.
Mhm.
And then stuff at home, like my family life, I was not very close with my mom at the time. We always butted heads and we were trying to rekindle that relationship again, and just something would blow up and go out of proportion. And now we're really good. I'm super close with my mom now and she has become one of my best friends along with my dad. And I'll get into that, but
Mhm.
it I remember sitting in my car, and I was Private Harris at the time. And I had a huge support system. I truly did. But nobody knew what I was going through. Like
Mhm.
when you see me at work and everything, I'm always happy.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm always super happy go lucky, outgoing Katie, right?
Mhm.
And mm-mm. When I'm by myself, I'm the complete opposite of that. And during that time, I remember sitting in my car and I had my carry gun with me and I full on had a plan of just, this is it. Like, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm tired of feeling this way. Like,
Mhm.
I'm mentally exhausted, and it was so hard. And I remember calling my then boyfriend And I remember calling him and just not being 100% in my right mind. And I was talking nonsense. And he just kind of he calmed me down a little bit and he said, "I see you." And that stopped me for a little bit. I put my gun
Hmm.
back in my lap and I'm like, you know what? I can get through this. But then it just like it came over me in a wave. And it's like, no, you're still gonna feel like this when we hang up. Like it's not just gonna go away. Like, no,
Hmm.
this is it. I shit you not, Alex. I literally put my carry gun to my temple and I pulled the trigger and nothing happened.
It didn't go off.
Nothing happened. It didn't go off. And I know how to shoot and I know how to take a safety off and I know how to load it. And everything was there. Like it was planned out.
Hmm.
And I was ready to just go. And it clicked and I screamed. And I can hear my husband on the other side of the phone screaming, "Katie, I see you. I see you. I see the struggle you're going through." He just kept repeating, "I see you." And in that moment, I finally felt seen.
Hmm.
And I know that that's not the right thing to not so much threaten somebody that you're going to do it, but I was actually going to do it with him on the phone.
Hmm.
It didn't happen. And I dropped my gun and I just sat there and I am bawling at this point. Like I'm losing my shit. Like I could not speak properly. And I'm like, what did I just do? I can't, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like
Hmm.
I felt it. And then I questioned myself, oh my God, what did I just do? You know? And now again that I'm older, like I can't imagine how my parents would feel, how Dave would feel,
Hmm.
how, oh my God, looking at the life I had now, like I'm so happy that my gun didn't go off.
Hmm.
So happy. And just wow. Like I
So
get
many.
chills every time I tell this story.
Well, I mean, so many amazing things since then have fallen into place for you.
Yeah, they
And
have.
those things, you hate to do the whole, what if, play the what if game, but
Mhm.
this is
Absolutely.
it's kind of a powerful thought that stuff wouldn't have happened if
Yeah.
if that had worked out, if that had actually.
Yeah, it's and I still ask myself sometimes too, just to kind of reel myself back in when I do start to go down a little path of sadness and
Hmm.
depression. I start to reel myself back in like you will never get there again. You will never have to do this again because you know how to pull yourself out now.
Hmm.
You know that you have your support system. You know that you can reach out to people now.
Oh
And,
yeah.
being in the army, it still is actually, it's such a big stigma that you don't talk about it because you're
Hmm.
afraid of the judgment and you're afraid, like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. And I was actually told, in quote, guns and depression don't mix here, unquote. And I'm like, okay, I'm
Right.
I'm gonna lose my job because I'm depressed. I just I finally spoke up about it at my PHA. That's how I got on the medication. I got on the counseling. I was going literally every other day to start out, and then it
Hmm.
became a once a week, and then it became a once a month. I still go. I still go just because I have somebody who I can tell everything to. They
Hmm.
can't tell nobody. Legally, they can't tell anybody.
Just
And
lay it
it
all
just,
out there.
yes, I lay it all out there, right? I still go. And it just feels good to have somebody who doesn't know like where you came from. They don't really know
Hmm.
you. They hear your problems, they recommend some stuff for you, and you go on with it.
Yeah.
It just feels good to let it
Well,
out.
sometimes that's all we need. Yeah, sometimes we just need to let it
Yeah.
out to somebody who's not, going to be seeing us 24/7.
Yeah, and somebody who's not involved with anything.
Hmm.
Like
Yep.
I love talking to Dave. He's my best friend, he's my husband, but sometimes I just need to talk to somebody else.
Well, yeah, and like I like to like same thing with my wife. If she, comes with me with any kind of problem, I always have a tendency to try and overfix the
Yeah.
problem. So it's never fixed enough for me, so I have to, I end up being a little too involved. So I can see where that
Yeah.
might be beneficial.
Yeah. Dave's the same way. He is the same way. And, ever since that and starting the medication, the counseling, and at the time, my leadership at that time just didn't really handle it the best way.
Hmm.
My first sergeant, he was so supportive.
Hmm.
And I remember sitting at this round table with all of my leadership. And yeah, they all said that, Katie, it's okay. It's really okay to feel this way. Like, did you know all of us at this table are on medication too? And I'm like, wow, no, I didn't know that.
Hmm.
And again, because it is such a stigma to
Yep.
have, you know, mental health issues and have to go to behavioral health. It's like people think it's embarrassing
Hmm.
to have something wrong with you mentally, and like we talked about earlier, if you Google am I depressed and you match all
Yeah.
these all these
Yeah.
symptoms, right? You're gonna say, okay, I'm clinically depressed.
Hmm.
But it goes deeper than that. It's
It
so
is.
much deeper than the surface. And like the computer can't tell you how you really feel.
Mm-mm, no, and it's all very specific to each person. You know what I mean? The computer doesn't
Mhm.
know exactly what led you to this point.
Oh
The
yeah.
computer, the computer can't see the stuff floating all over you. That's like all the little
Exactly.
air bubbles of all the stuff that's going on. They can't see that.
Mhm.
Um, but
Yeah.
how amazing is that though? You bring up them all sitting around the table, and they say, "Hey, we're in the same boat," and you're like, "Wow!" Right? That right there is
Yeah.
kind of what we're trying to do here. So just spread that message out that y- you're not the only one.
And I think that was one of my turning points
Hmm.
actually was after my attempt and after finally getting the help and my leadership removed me from the environment that I was in because at that point they thought that was best. And again, being more mature as you
Hmm.
will and growing up a little bit more, I can see where they were coming from because it all just happened so quickly,
Hmm.
and they didn't really know what was best. But I felt like one of my turning points was them literally all telling me that they too are either on it or have been on it. And I felt like, okay, I'm truly going to be okay. And if I know that I'm not the only one that has felt this way or some type of way related to it, I know I got the help out there that
Hmm.
can guide me in the right direction, sit down and help me figure out what path I want to take and being able to maybe approach my family about it because, oh my gosh, that's another thing in itself. I was so scared to tell my parents anything,
Hmm.
you know, especially my dad.
Well,
Again,
because of
like I
how
said,
you grew up, right?
yeah, again,
Yeah.
like I said earlier, I was so focused on making others proud instead of myself. You
Hmm.
know, I was so focused on making my dad proud because I owe it to both my parents, but my dad was the one that really guided me to where I am now. My mom, she was super supportive. Moms are supposed to be the one that like hug you close, make you feel good. And dads are like, mm-mm, no, there's no such thing as sadness. Put up your wall.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. But I remember also driving home that day and the day after sitting down with my leadership and everything, I remember
Hmm.
driving home and I call my dad and I'm like, "Look, I I really need you to just listen before you say anything and I just need you to say, 'Okay, I hear you' when I'm done, and I'll tell
Hmm.
you when I'm done." And I still to this day have to do that to him. Like I have to prepare him for the
Yeah.
conversation so
Little
that he
preamble.
doesn't just like jump on it.
Yep.
Like, here's the intro. But I remember calling my dad and telling him, "Hey dad, I'm depressed and I'm getting put on medication. I'm going to start doing counseling." And I've seen my dad super like sympathetic and empathetic before, I've seen him that way, but not to this extent.
Mhm.
When I told him how I felt, he's like, "Okay, well, let's figure it out. What's going on? I want to know everything. Like, how can I
Mhm.
help you?" And I'm just like, "Who are you?" Because I've
Mhm.
never seen
Right.
that side, and I was so scared to tell him. Telling my mom, oh gosh, she's my mom. She is so she's very dramatic, and she
Mhm.
likes to put a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Extra behind everything,
Mhm. Yep.
And when I told her, she was freaking out, like she was crying, and she's
Mhm.
like, "Katie, I'm so sorry. I would have never known. You're so strong. You're so tough. You would never know because I'm so happy
Mhm.
all the time, right?" As I put up my air quotes, and the reactions from both of them were just like, "I really needed that," right?
Mhm.
So, and now I just built my support team even bigger. So
Yeah.
now I have my leadership behind me, I got my family behind me, and now I have my husband, Dave, who is behind me 24/7 every step of the way. And also going through that, that whole saying, "help me help you,"
Mhm.
mine's the complete opposite. Like, let me help you so that I can help and fix myself.
Mhm.
Like I
I like that.
I truly thank you. I truly found my passion after everything happened to me and after, my attempt. And I actually became a crisis counselor for the crisis text line.
Mhm.
And I volunteered 300 hours with them after I got my training done. And after that, I asked my NCOIC at the time if we had a suicide prevention program. And apparently we did, but it was never a
Yep.
thing.
Right.
And the
Checking the
NCO who
box.
had it, yeah, it was just, "Oop, we got it. Yep, we're
We
good."
got it here. Look the other
The
way.
NCO, the NCO who had it at the time was like, "Good luck," and just handed me the book. And I'm like,
Mhm.
"No, I'm gonna change this." I built the program as a brand new E5 and I built it all. I was doing check-ins randomly with the teams and I built these slides and I actually got to conduct the classes for people and just being able to see like when we have to put these posters up of our faces in the offices around the unit, it
Yep.
I was putting them up and I can see people like, "Okay, okay, cool. I see what you're doing, Katie."
Yep.
And I'm just shaking my head like, "If you need me, I'm
Yeah.
here." You know? Like, "Let me help you."
Like a little secret drug deal going on. Like.
That's pretty much how it felt,
Yep.
And I think I put up all my posters that day, and then a few days later, I got a phone call from another NCO in the unit who was just going through it, and they didn't really feel like they could talk to their spouse. And it was actually really, I was overwhelmed in joy that somebody actually took my training seriously, that they know that I'm here for them. Like I felt so good.
Mhm.
And that right there just gave me even more purpose of not so much being needed, but the purpose of helping others. Like that's
Mhm.
what I was put on this earth to do. And helping others helps me. It just replenishes my soul and just makes me just so happy and giddy all the time. Like
Well, that's
I
awesome.
again
It's advantageous to both parties anyway, so it's perfect.
yeah, and I feel good when I can help somebody just get out of that hole. And I'm not
Mhm.
going to say like I've completely saved a life just from talking to somebody. But there was this younger soldier a few years ago who actually drank, and I had to go get them. They actually tried to commit suicide with me with them. And now this soldier is amazing. They are promoted. They are doing so good. They have went to schools. They have gotten more stuff to make their uniform like super fancy. And I have not been more proud of this specific soldier than anybody else. Like this, she was my, she was like my little sister. She still is, and we still talk. And I adore her for making that change and jumping
Mhm.
on it and fixing everything and reaching out to the right resources. Like she has made a dramatic change. And I feel like I'm not going to take all the credit because her family helped her with a lot of that stuff too. And leadership as well. You know, she got to move teams and
Mhm.
just have a fresh start just with that. And God, I tear up just thinking about it. But just knowing that I had a part in helping that just makes me feel good, you know?
Well, I
So,
would argue that maybe your part was probably a lot bigger than you think, just because you were the part that you offered was the talking, the part that allowed them
mhm,
to just open up, and you were able to. I'm assuming you were able to share your story with her as well, and
absolutely, yeah.
just that open communication to let her know she's not alone. I
Mhm.
think that was probably, I would venture to guess, huge in that transformation for her.
Yeah,
So
I don't want to take all the credit, but
mhm.
I'll take a good chunk.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like to just, you know, you got to dig deep into yourself and sometimes you got to put yourself first. And I know that a lot of people don't like to do that and
Mhm.
people are like, "Oh, stay humble," you know, like okay, cool. Like you can be humble, but also speak up too. You
Mhm.
don't have to keep doing it all by yourself, you know?
Oh yeah.
And I don't think I've asked for help ever in my entire life because again, my dad, you know, he raised us
Mhm.
tough to be tough in the world that we have today and I respect him for that. And I can't thank him enough. You know, he's my parents are great. And truly they are, both of them. And I just I cannot put it into words of how important it is to speak up and give yourself that love that you deserve. And even if you feel like you're not getting it properly from, you know, your significant other or friendships that you have with other people and hell, even your dog, right?
Mhm.
Your dog goes through it too. You know, they have their little moments of
Oh yeah.
sadness.
Oh, I got
But
two super s- very very full of personality dogs.
oh yes. Mine is so lazy, but anyways, I can't express it so much how important it is to take care of yourself too.
Mhm.
Like you have the $20 that you've been saving up, go spend it on yourself. Seriously, just go get the Taco Bell. Go get the pedicure.
Mhm.
Go do what you got to do, you know? And even if that $20 like you see somebody homeless and it makes you happy to just give them food, then do that. If that's what's going to give you joy at that moment,
Mhm.
do it. Seriously. I exercise. That's a big thing that people, you know, throw out there when you're feeling some type of way, the endorphins and everything going through
Mhm.
you and you know, it helps. And there's so many different ways to really put yourself first. And that's like, again, I can't express that enough to focus on you too instead of everybody else.
I like that.
Yeah,
S-
I do
So
too.
so not only so we're talking to a staff sergeant in the military, right?
Yeah.
You're not only that, you're an excellent shooter,
Mm,
excellent soldier, but
Yeah,
also you're a mother as well. And that
I
can't be
am.
easy. That can't be easy because it's hard enough to be a soldier. It's hard enough to
Yeah.
be a soldier. And being a mother on top of that. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh goodness, man. Yes, I am a great shooter, and back in the day when I was a competitive shooter and everything, I have my national titles, my worlds, my regionals, states, all that good stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I did everything I wanted to. And, I'm married and we've been married, oh God, coming up on 6 years now.
Congratulations.
And thank you. We've been married for almost 6 years now, together 7. And, your goals change in life. And me and Dave decided, hey, it's time to have kids. And we were trying, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to start college. I went to college full time. And during that, I found out I was pregnant with my first son. So, and I told myself, you know what? I'll take a semester off when I have him. So I took my final exams like a week before I had Sam, my oldest. And it was so overwhelming for me because I'm like, oh my God, when am I going to pop this baby out? Right.
Yeah.
Like, I really need to take my exams. I just need to get through this week. End of story. And so I have my son, and, it is the most wonderful thing on this earth. Like, I cannot express the feeling you have when you have your own kids. And you see all these TikToks like, have you made a human yet? I've made humans. Like, I've made two. But, it is awesome. The whole experience of motherhood and watching your significant other be a parent with you, like you guys are growing together in adulthood even more
Mhm.
and digging real deep into that. But on the other side of motherhood, you also have the topic that nobody ever wants to talk about, and that's postpartum depression. It it is actually really hard to explain because I'm not going to say depression's beautiful,
Mhm.
but the beauty of depression is that it is so different compared to everybody else's depression.
Mhm.
The one thing that you go through can hit you different than the same thing that they're going through, but not really. Everybody's vision of depression is completely different. And with postpartum depression, you're going through not just having the kid, like you're going either cesarean or natural birth, right? Like
Mhm.
you tell yourself like, no, we're going to go natural. I don't want a C-section because I want the full experience. But at the
Right.
same time, cesareans are 10 times harder than natural, and you're going through the complete body change.
Mhm.
And you have your normal self before child, and then you're pregnant, and it's beautiful. Like, seriously, it is a beautiful thing to know that you're growing someone. And then you have it, and you feel empty, honestly. And it's like, oh, the joy I just had, of being pregnant, like it's out now, but I kind of miss this. And your mind
Mhm.
just starts kind of telling you that your body isn't beautiful anymore, and
Mhm.
you're going through all these changes and it's constant, right? And then you have the thing of motherhood, of breastfeeding.
Mhm.
I didn't really get to experience that because my body just couldn't do it. And
Mhm.
I saw that as I'm a terrible mom. I saw that as I can't provide for my kid. I saw
Mhm.
it as, again, I don't belong here. Like, if I can't provide for my kid, how am I supposed to provide for anything? And
Mhm.
your hormones are so out of whack and out of sync during the whole process after birth. And it can hit you as soon as it happens. And I actually have friends who gave birth and they didn't feel anything when holding their kid
It was just
for the
instant.
first time. Yeah, it
Wow.
wasn't there. It actually took them a few weeks to actually feel that connection and love for them. And
Mhm.
it's a scary thing to talk about because you don't want to be judged. And
Right.
I get it. Like, I didn't experience postpartum depression until maybe 6 to 7 months after I had Sam. And it hit me like I felt so alone, but I was coming home to a happy baby, a happy husband, and a beautiful home, you know? I had everything I wanted, but something was just telling me that this isn't right. This isn't enough. Like,
Did
oh,
it make you feel guilty to have those emotions? Is that kind of part of what kind of
yeah.
amplified that? You felt guilty about having that depression?
Mhm. Oh, yeah, the guilt is definitely there, you know? Like, I felt guilty just to take a shower. Like, asking to take a shower, I felt guilty
Hmm.
because I wasn't being there for my child, right? And I felt guilty asking Dave to have Sam. And I felt guilty that I wanted to cook a pizza instead of a 5-course meal. And you feel guilt for everything. Like, oh, I forgot a burp cloth. Ugh, mom shame, right?
Oh,
And then you go
geez.
to the park. Yeah, it's terrible.
Mom shame. That sounds so bad.
It's a real thing. Mom shame is there, you know?
Sounds like
And
there should be a
then
hashtag in front of it.
yeah, hashtag mom shame. And then, you have all of these things on social media, right? And you compare yourself to everybody
Oh, geez, yeah.
after the fact, right? Like, oh, I see this model, she's had 3 kids. Why don't I look like that? You know?
Mm.
Why can't why can't I bounce back? Why can't I feel as good as she feels? But that's the thing about social media. Everything's just you're blinded
Hmm.
by what the real stuff
Oh,
is.
yeah.
And I had a miscarriage during the time of my postpartum depression hit. I actually lost twins, and that was the hardest thing I've ever went through in my life, honestly, because on top of the suicide prevention, yes, that's a thing. On top of the postpartum depression, I lost 2 babies. And again, I felt like my body can't do it. My body is not good enough. Like, I can't even grow humans anymore. And I felt like the world was over. And your mind just wants to catastrophize everything at that point, you know?
Start
And it
snowballing.
it was hard. Oh yeah, snowball effect in full effect. And again, I was going to college full time still. So it was super hard, and I let my grade slip for political science, and that was my first grade that was not an A. So I messed up my goals and making others proud instead of myself. And
Hmm.
I got into the mindset of, you know what? C's get degrees. Okay, you know that? C's
Yep, yep.
C's get degrees, man. And I just kept asking myself, Katie, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, pull yourself together. And I finally went and talked to a licensed therapist, and she was able to give me good resources of, mom groups,
Hmm.
kind of like an AA meeting. Again, there's nothing wrong with these meetings. If you have a problem, please go reach out and get the help you
Oh, yeah.
need, right? So I was going to these mom meetings during lunchtime at work, and it made me feel 10 times better to know that hashtag mom shame is it's a thing. Like,
Hmm.
you feel shame on everything. And that's actually where I got it because one of the ladies in that group actually spoke up and she's like, I had total mom shame earlier. I'm like, oh my God, me too.
Did we just become best friends?
Yeah, pretty much. And it felt good and reassured that it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It's really not. And now that I have my second son, who I had a beautiful pregnancy with, and is super healthy, I was terrified the whole time
Hmm.
because of my miscarriage before him. And it it gets scary during that, you know? And even just during the whole thing of pregnancy, you don't want to, oh, if I eat too much chocolate, I'm going to become a diabetic. And you have all these things like, oh, or make sure you're walking every day. You don't want to get out of sync with your exercise and stuff. Like, people are trying to tell you, like, hey, make sure you're doing this. But at the same time, they're never saying or asking, "Hey, are you doing okay today?"
Yeah.
Like, "Hey, how are you feeling?"
Well, yeah, and then on top of that, I hear stress as well is terrible.
Mhm.
So if you're stressing about all these things too much, that's bad too. So
Yeah,
that is
the
not an easy
stress.
road.
No, it is not. Again, it's beautiful, but
Hmm.
it is also all these other feelings and things as well. And the stress you have of just making sure that you're a good mom and, planning out these meals. And that's another mom shame thing too, People think it's such a bad thing that your kid doesn't eat a vegetable every night, you
Oh,
know?
geez.
Right. Like my kid ate like 2 spoonfuls of rice for dinner tonight. He didn't want anything, and he's like, "I
Hmm.
want a popsicle." And I'm like, "You can't have a popsicle." It's just you start out like, "Oh, no, I'm gonna make sure he has his grains, his veggies, and his
Hmm.
proteins." And that's the mom shame thing about it. You have, again, social media, you have the parents who are these Insta famous people of like, "Oh, here's their meal for today. Here's their snack time." I'm like, "You have snack time?" Like, I thought applesauce was lunch today, you
Right.
know? And that's a mom shame thing,
Yeah,
and
show me a video of that kid eating all of that food. That's what I want to see.
no, like, your kid actually ate that chicken? That shredded
Right.
chicken, not a
Yeah, I'm
chicken
sure he
nugget?
did.
Come on. But seriously, that's mom shame, the postpartum depression, the stress on top of just being a good mom and making sure your kid eats that day is what's important,
Hmm.
you know? And again, back to the breastfeeding thing. Everybody wants to say, "Oh, breast is best," but actually, no, fed is best because some moms like me just can't produce.
Hmm.
And we have to go to formula and try to figure out which formula works for that child. And then that's another stressful thing and another topic in itself. But
Yeah.
it's, you get
It's
shamed
fed is
for,
best, C's get
yeah,
degrees, right?
yes. Fed best, C's get degrees, you know, your husband, he's got clean clothes. You're
There you go.
good. Food is on the table. We're having frozen pizza tonight.
That's success. That is success in my book.
Yes, it is. It is, man, just people are going to judge you no matter what.
Hmm.
But as long as you're happy and your house is happy, if your foundation's good, your house ain't falling.
Hmm.
You got to dig deep into those roots of yourself and really figure out who you are and truly learn to love yourself before you can love others. It's really hard to love yourself, and you are your own worst critic. That's a thing.
I'm gonna write that down,
So,
by the way. If your foundation's good, your house ain't falling. I like that.
yeah, dude, take it. Take it. You got to have a strong base, and that's because once your roots are planted and your tree goes strong, it's real hard to break.
Hmm.
It is so hard to break it. And even if your tree is to fall over, you can still regrow. That's the thing. You're going to hit your rock bottom and you got to figure out your way to come all the way back up to the top. And it's going to be a long road, but I promise you it's worth it. It's
Absolutely.
completely worth it.
Absolutely. Man, you just got me thinking. Just we're in a unique spot here because we're talking about you know how it's okay to not be okay. We've been spouting that for with TWNY for a long time, and
Hmm.
we're our mission here is to try and destigmatize talking about these feelings people have that drive them ultimately to try and commit suicide.
Yep.
And in the military, it's terrible,
Hmm.
and I think we touched on some reasons. I mean, specifically with you on why that is, because it's not just the one unit that we're at, you know.
Hmm.
It's military wide. These
Yeah.
issues that and it's hard to attribute it to one thing, and it's just one of the things I was thinking about was when I was back at Fort Riley, when I was in my first unit,
Mhm.
I would go to work, I would get off work, and I would go to my barracks room, which was separated. Right, we had separate barracks rooms. We had a, like it was like a, what do you call it, like a main
A
kitchen
common
area.
area.
Yeah, common area. And then we had the separate rooms, right? Every single day for basically 2 years. I mean, there'd be days here and there where I'd go out and do something, but pretty much every
Mhm.
single day, I'd go to that room and I'd shut the door and I'd be alone.
Yeah.
I wouldn't talk to anyone unless it was over, a phone, texting, which is super, not personal. And I feel like that has a lot to do with it, is that being alone. Not only are you feeling alone,
Every
but you're
day.
also being alone. And in the military, I think that happens a lot.
Yeah, it does. And going back to the barracks stuff that you just talked about, yeah. You know, my barracks with the first barracks building that I was at, I literally did not share anything. I had my own room with my own kitchen and my own bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't share anything. So,
Wow.
yeah, I was even more isolated than you were.
Mm-hmm.
And being, you know, I was just turned 19 and everybody else is 21 and older. So, they can go out and have all
Yep.
the fun,
Have all the good
but
time.
I would show up to work, do my PT, I would do my job for the day, and I'd go home. And I was so basic in the barracks for dinner. I literally meal prepped chicken, rice, and broccoli for the longest time.
Mm-hmm. I did that
Like,
too.
and I knew how to cook.
Yeah.
I knew how to cook, but on Sundays, I would just prep it all out, and that's all I would eat.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, I hate this. And you just kind of dig yourself into that hole of depression. And you're like, is this ever going to get any better? Like, how am I going to make friends here? If I'm just constantly locking myself here. But then you feel stuck and it's hard to get out of that because it becomes a routine for you and you become an an introvert at that time and you don't
Mm-hmm.
want to talk to anybody. And again, the texting stuff too, like, I didn't wanna talk to anybody on the phone, but I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
talk to somebody, so texting was
Right.
kinda there, I'll reply when I want to, when I can kinda thing, and I figured out how to, I guess what's the word I'm looking for? I figured out how to be one with myself, and that got me to where I was okay with being alone,
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time, though, I kept showing up to work, just I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere, like I was just at a dead road, and again, in the military, it is so hard to really speak up and tell others how you're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I hate about it. The whole hashtag that the Army has is "Stop the Stigma,"
Mm-hmm.
and as much as they want to try to promote it, it's still there. Because
Right.
there are units out there with leadership that doesn't give two shits about you. Like, they don't.
No, absolutely. You're just a number. You're
Yeah,
just filling a slot on the team.
exactly. And that's the worst part about it because you decide to reenlist, you decide to stay in, and you're going to another unit now. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like, hopefully the leadership's good here, man. Hopefully I can feel a part of something. Right. And then you get there and you're just like, nope, still shit leadership. It's still a toxic environment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
And
I think a lot of people think of veteran suicide, especially
mhm,
people on the civilians on the outside who are looking in. I think that
yeah.
they see veteran suicide as mostly PTSD related, which
Mhm.
I don't have the specific numbers. I need to get those numbers and look at them, but
Yeah.
I I feel like, it could probably have also a lot to do with that. Just the everyday, just the droll every day and then being alone.
Mhm.
When you're alone, you start, seeing, you go on Instagram and you start seeing pictures of people having all their perfect lives and your life is, maybe not as perfect. And then, couple that with whatever they're experiencing in their unit, whatever that may be,
Mhm.
and you don't even need PTSD for that disaster.
Yeah. Like I don't personally have the deployment experience. I never got to experience
Hmm.
that. And, you know, I kind of wish I did, just so that I could try to feel what they're feeling. The people
Hmm.
with PTSD, like it's a real thing. My dad still actually has it.
100%.
Growing up, I was the only person that could touch him without him freaking out. And I was the only voice that could wake him up, without him freaking out.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's just because I'm the favorite child or something,
It
but
probably is.
I hope he listens just to hear that
Yeah.
part. No, I grew up watching my dad go through that. And I specifically wanted to deploy just so I could feel what they're going through,
Mhm.
so that I could help them a little bit more and try to understand what they're going through. But then you have the people who they just show up, they could work in a motor pool and again, never deploy. They show up and you get told to clean something that was cleaned 5 minutes ago. And
Mhm.
then you're mopping concrete and you're doing this stupid shit for no reason, just to pass time. And then you question
Yep.
yourself, like, why am I here?
Mhm.
And it gets to the point where, do I even want to do this anymore? Like, is this even worth it? And then you tell yourself, well, I'm never going to be able to have a life on the outside, you know? And that's what soldiers are so scared of. Like myself right now, I'm actually getting out next year and I'm terrified. I am terrified to leave the army because, yeah, the army takes care of you financially and medical and stuff, but man, your mental health, it's
Mhm.
they're not going to take care of you unless you actually speak up, you
Oh yeah.
know? And that's the sad part is you can't speak up, but you can. And you can't speak up because say you're an E7 and you're scared that if I speak up, I'm just going to look weak. I'm a leader. I'm
Mhm.
in a leadership position. I can't do that. But then the way I see it now is you're an E7 and you're speaking up. Think of that private or specialist that you just said,
100%.
like you just told them without telling them it's okay. It is okay to not be okay. Like
Yes.
seriously, it it's mind blowing to me right now because I did not see any of my higher level NCOs, my E7s, E6s and stuff at the time when I was a younger enlisted that because everybody looks fine.
Mhm.
Everybody just looks happy all the time.
Puts on their
And
happy face. Yep.
yeah, there was actually an NCO who came from a prior unit and he was an amputee from the knee down on I think his left leg. I'm not really sure. But
Mhm.
he actually makes jokes about his leg being gone because that's how he copes with it.
Mhm.
But still, I remember talking to him saying that it's all fake. He's not okay. I
Mm.
remember talking with him and him saying that he just puts on a fake face and he makes the jokes to make people think that he's all right. And when he told me that, I'm like, wow, wow, I can only imagine, that.
Mhm.
Because now you're going into not feeling like you're enough because you're missing your leg, right?
Missing a literal part of you. Yeah.
Literally, like you almost gave your life for this country, right? But you got to survive. You're just missing your leg. And then when we do PT, like you're feeling like you can't keep up. And these things happen. Like people get problems while they're deployed. People get problems by just being here in the States at their duty station. You get hurt, and then you feel like you can't do anything right.
Mhm.
And again, just being stuck in that hole of loneliness and constantly telling yourself that you're not good enough, you're never going to get promoted, you're seeing your peers go ahead of you to certain things, to schools, your promotions,
Mhm.
and you see your friends back home who aren't in the military who are getting married, they're having babies, they're buying houses, and you're stuck in a barracks room
You're kind
eating
of frozen
chicken,
in time
rice,
a
and
little bit.
broccoli. Yeah.
Yeah. On your twin bed with your pasty white walls.
That you can't paint, you can't
You
decorate,
can't do anything to it.
you can't even have a freaking fish. Like, something to come home to. You don't have it, you
Yep.
know? And it's a real problem. And man, that's the part that I hate about it. You get to see everybody else doing so well around you,
Mhm.
but then you're like, well, I'm stuck in this little 10 by 10 room eating nonsense and not doing anything. And I sit on my bed and watch Netflix. And it's boring.
Mhm.
And a boring life, some people like boring, and that's no problem. But sometimes I like boring too. But I want to go have those experiences, but I felt like I'm so alone, and you don't want to ask anybody because then you feel like you're a burden, you know?
Right.
Because what if they don't want to do what you're doing?
Exactly. And then
And what
and
if
then once you see how hard it is, or you feel how hard it is, then you just go back to what's easy, and that's sit down to
exactly,
watch
man?
Netflix and
Hmm.
eat chicken.
And chicken, yeah. And by the time the night's over, you're out of chicken. And
Yeah.
you're now going to the ice cream that's in your freezer,
Oh
and
man, and
you're
then it's all
depressed
over.
eating.
Yeah.
And you're already through an entire season of whatever show you're watching.
Yep, yep.
It is a problem in the military, and it it truly does need to end, but it's never going to end
Mm-mm.
until it is actually talked about the way it needs to be in every unit, not just specific units who actually care,
Mhm.
you know? We need more good leadership out there and the right people to get promoted, and just, you actually have to learn to ask for the help too. That's a big thing as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think leaders could definitely benefit by sharing their
Mhm.
story. Like we're doing here. You know, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from doing this podcast, just
Yeah.
people sharing their story, and people coming to me saying, "Hey, listen to that podcast. That's awesome." And I don't know what they're feeling. I don't know if they're going through something. You know what I mean? But they're telling me that the podcast is awesome, that they love it, and maybe that's helping them. And I think leaders could do that. Just like you said, what happens when that sergeant first class comes up and says, "Hey, I'm going through this right now." You know what I mean? How many lower enlisted, anyone that's in the room hearing this is going to benefit
Mhm.
from that,
Yeah,
and
just
might say that they're not alone, and holy cow, I can make it through this.
yeah, being that stepping stone for somebody, like, I don't think people realize how impactful that is to see
Mhm.
like your boss, somebody who outranks you, not even just the military, but literally anywhere.
Mhm.
Seeing somebody who outranks you and who is above you go get the help is going to really impact that person
Oh yeah.
who just showed up to work, right? They're brand new.
Mhm.
It's going to help them, like, okay, well, if they're doing it, I can do it too.
It opens a literal door. It opens a
It
door for
does.
them to go do that.
It sure does. And I wish it were that easy
Mhm.
to get that message across.
Yeah. Well, I want to be, I want to congratulate you on your eventual transition out of the army. I know you're scared, you're worried, but just from all
Yeah,
the amazing stuff that you've already done, the stuff that you've talked on here, that you've been through, your experience, your skills, you're gonna do just fine. You are going to
thanks.
excel. I just know it.
Thanks,
Um,
Alex.
but right before we end here, if you had any advice for anybody who, and you've already mentioned so a lot of good advice on here already. I've written some of it down.
Mhm.
But if you had any advice for someone who was in that dark spot, who's sitting in their car with their carry gun to their head,
Mhm.
what would that advice be?
The best thing that I can say, like, what I wanted to hear in that position was, Katie, you're going to have the life that you always wanted. You're going to have it. Don't stop here.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the end of your story. This is not over. Everything's going to be okay. And the best advice I can have for that in that moment is to really dig deep into that soul and find who you are, find your purpose, and love yourself for who you are. Even in your
Mm-hmm.
dark moments at that time right there, you still got to love yourself, and you're going
Mm-hmm.
to forgive yourself. and everything is seriously going to be just fine. If I can do it, they sure can too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Katie, for coming on the TWNY podcast. This was an awesome conversation. I loved it. I know everyone, I got people looking forward to this. I know my wife's looking forward to listening to this one for sure. So it's going to be great. And for anyone else who, just to put this out there, I think it'll be in the intro and the outro too. But if you want to come on, if you want to share your story, reach out to me at attelk@twny.life. I think I finally got the email right. I think I messed it up in the last two. Reach out to me and I'll get back to you, and we will schedule a time for you to come on here and share your story. So thanks again.
Of course.
And I'll see you at work.
All right.